All right. Good morning to those across the Philippines as well as the Ryukyu Islands of Japan. Today we're mainly going to be focusing on two systems, 94W, also known as Luis in the Philippines, but we'll also be discussing Typhoon Dolphin. So let me just stream on Facebook to get that started. Okay, that's good. Let me share this on Discord as well. See, Image XX Studios said Hurricane Chaser Chase is live. He sees that. Right, so let me just wait, I should be. Should be. Hopefully I'm live. He says or not, but I should be live. Alright, let's see who is in the chat. We got MRNZ, Minecraft Billy, Lays, we got Richie, of course, we got Honey, Celestial, Andrew, Fung, Bavi the Super Typhoon, nice to see you in the chat, and ADAD, one of my Discord moderators, is in the chat as well. Hope you all are doing well. As always, if you have any questions about this storm or other storms in the Western Pacific, you can always ask in the chat and I will get towards those questions in the later part of the update. So let's get started right now. So we're focusing on two systems. One is something that's just been named Luis by Pagasa, and we'll also be discussing Typhoon Dolphin out in the open Western Pacific. So currently we're looking at Luis here. This is the forecast cone that I made roughly 6 hours ago. So this would be as of 8 o'clock Philippine time. I believe so, yes. All right. So pretty much right now it's a low pressure area located just northeast of the Bicol region in the Philippines. Let me pull up this tab here. There we go. So the system is expected to become a tropical cyclone, a tropical depression within the next 12 hours or so, and then by hour 24 it will be nearing, this would be around Aurora or southern Isabela province in the Philippines, making landfall and moving over the Philippines, moving over central or northern Luzon as a tropical depression by hour 36, so a landfall is expected within the next 36 hours. After that, it looks like it might maintain tropical cyclone status and still be a tropical depression when it enters the South China Sea by hour 48. Then by hour 60, it's expected to just stall. It's trying to move west, but you can probably guess why it's not going to be just continuing moving off west all the way towards Vietnam. We got another little factor that's going to be moving this direction. You may already know what I'm talking about, which is going to be tugging it to the east, allowing it to intensify into a tropical storm by hour 72. It will be making landfall again within the next 4 days, being downgraded then to a remnant low by day 4, and still a remnant low by day 5 when it's pulled back out into the Philippine Sea. There is a chance it could reform after that within the next 7 days, but that's a little bit in the longer range beyond the forecast cone. Our main focus is going to be the threat it poses to the Philippines. So let's go over those threats. So as it's expected to stall, the main threat of the system is going to be the rainfall, the flooding it's going to be bringing. Marginal impacts, that's anything you see in that green shaded area. That does include majority of Mindoro, as well as pretty much the entirety of Luzon with the exception of the southern Bicol region. So this does include areas like Quezon, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, even the far northern tip of the Catanduanes. Then looking north of it, we have, again, the entirety of Luzon there, pretty much the northern portions of Cagayan and the far northern coast of Ilocos Norte. The Babuin Islands, at least some of them, are in that marginal impact category as well. So what does this mean, marginal impacts? Well, expect minor tropical impacts with brief periods of gusty wind and some rain. A few branches may come down and minor street flooding is possible. Not really bad in those regions. Now let's step it up to the slight impact category. That's anything you see in the yellow shaded area. So this does include western Mindoro. It does as well include portions of Batangas and Cavite here, even portions of Laguna. And then far northern Camarines Norte is included in that as well. Let me just grab this on my phone so I can give a little bit of a better description as to what places are in it. Okay, then looking northward here, this does include a majority of Aurora as well as Carino. The entirety of Isabella is included in it. The southern portions of Cagayan, majority of Apayao is included in that. Same with Ilocos Norte out over here. And then same with Abra, Kalinga, Mountain Province. Basically these areas right here, Ifugao and Nueva Vizcaya, Nueva Ecija. These areas are pretty much in that slight impact category. Again, in the form of flooding. So what does that mean? Well, noticeable storm conditions with gusts capable of knocking down tree limbs and causing power outages. That's in case there's any severe tropical storm kind of winds. But localized flooding may affect low spots. That's going to be the primary threats in those regions. Stepping it up now to the moderate impact category, that's anything you see in the orange shaded areas. That's going to be areas that could be seeing over 200 millimeters of rain. This does include the far northern coast of Cavite, Rizal there, mainly western Rizal, as well as the Metro Manila, of course, is included in that impact category as well. Western Bulacan, eastern portions of Pampanga, Nueva Ecija, mainly western portions of that region. As we get further north, western Ifugao, and then Mountain Province, Kalinga, all those areas, the western portions mostly, and then southern portions of Abra, and mostly southern portions of Ilocos Sur as well. Looking down here as well, the southern portions of Bataan are also included in that moderate impact category. This is again in the form of flooding. So what does that mean? We're going to be focusing on the flooding section of this. So flooding of neighborhoods and small rivers are possible, making some roads impassable. That's for over 200 millimeters of rain. And then let's step it up to the major impact category, since major flooding is expected from this disturbance for the western coast of Luzon. This does include majority of Bataan, the entirety of Zambales, as well as this would be northwestern Pampanga, as we get no further north, the western portions, like northwestern portions of Nueva Ecija, Pangasinan, pretty much the entirety of it is in that major impact category. Same with Benguets, and of course, majority of La Union, and then, yeah, La Union is included in that as well, and portions of Ilocos Sur as well is included in that major impact category. So what do major impacts mean? Well, severe winds can cause, well, not winds, but life-threatening flooding in vulnerable areas. That's going to be the main threat. This is where we can see several fatalities from the system if people do not take it seriously with the amount of flooding that could happen. Over 300 millimeters of rain are expected to fall in those areas. Now, there are places that could be seeing extreme or catastrophic flooding. This does include mainly far northwestern portions of Zambales, the northwestern side of Pangasinan, and mainly western portions of this would be La Union. These are the areas that could be seeing catastrophic flooding from the system, as not just 300 millimeters of rain could fall, over 600 millimeters of rain could fall. This would mean flooding may be unsurvivable, and recovery could take months in these areas. This would be due to landslides, that kind of flooding. Could be catastrophic in this area. This has been downgraded from catastrophic as the system isn't expected to be as strong and some of the rain has already fallen. But additional catastrophic impacts are possible in that area. I briefly want to go over the signal warnings. This is as of 5 a.m. here. I believe that's the latest update. This does include portions of eastern Quezon, Camarines Norte, northeastern Camarines Sur, and the Catanduanes are all under Signal 1 warnings for Luis. Now let's shift over to Typhoon Dolphin. This system is a Category 4 beast out in the open Western Pacific. Over the next 2 days or so, it is expected to maintain major typhoon intensity, mainly a Category 3, far north of the Mariana Islands, moving due west. After day 2, the system is expected to weaken down to a Category 2, but still hold it through, this would be day 3, day 4, and day 5. As we get into day 5, this is when the system is reaching or approaching the Ryukyu Islands of Japan. After day 5, it's expected to pass into the East China Sea down to a Category 1, and day 6 and day 7, it's going to be a Category 1 strength typhoon in the East China Sea. And just as a reminder, it's fairly uncertain where this system will go this far out. The cone is 380 nautical miles in each direction for a reason. Could go as far north as southern Japan off towards the Korean Peninsula, or it could go as far south as the Luzon Strait towards the Batanes Islands in the Philippines. Could go as far south as Taiwan out there, could head towards Shanghai, China, or could just go due west and go towards, this would be Fujian province in China. So, again, it's pretty uncertain this far out where Typhoon Dolphin is going to go, but this kind of gives you an idea. There's like a 90% chance it will end up somewhere in this cone of uncertainty. So areas like the Philippines over here, they should not be seeing much wind impacts from the system, although they could be seeing that habitat increase over the next week or so. We'll discuss that later on in future updates. Now let's go over the threat level of impacts that the system is expected to bring. So marginal impacts are expected for at least this island out over here, the southern coast of mainland Japan. The entirety of the Ryukyu and Sakishima Islands are all in that marginal impact category. So again, expect minor tropical impacts with brief periods of gusty wind and some rain. A few branches may come down and minor street flooding is possible. So that's what's all expected in those areas. They're not the only impacts anymore. That was the case yesterday, but now some areas are expected to see slight impacts. This does include the southern tip of mainland Japan, and of course the Ryukyu Islands are also included in that as well. This is going to be a mixture of rain and wind, mostly wind. Noticeable storm conditions with gusts capable of knocking down tree limbs and causing power outages. Localized flooding may affect low spots. That's what's all expected there. Now, stepping it up now, we have moderate impacts in some places. These are going to be for the main Ryukyu Islands. All these areas are expected to see moderate impacts as typhoon force winds are likely in these locations over the next 5 days. So damaging winds may snap trees and tear weaker roofs. That's mainly the threat out there. No moderate impacts are expected just yet in the form of flooding, but that may change as we get into tomorrow. That's all that expected with Typhoon Dolphin. Now let's briefly discuss the world of tropics as we have a fair amount of activity going on out over here. Make sure this is nice. Okay, there we go. So we do have a fair amount going on. Nothing's expected in the next 7 days in the Atlantic, although beyond that range we could be seeing something. Same with the Eastern Pacific, as we have maybe a disturbance beyond the 7-day range. But we do have Tropical Storm Genevieve moving out to sea off to the west, and we also have the remnants of Fausto now in the Central Pacific, which is expected to cross over in the Western Pacific, not really develop into anything, but just a little remnants of something to track. In the Western Pacific, we of course have Major Typhoon Dolphin. We discussed where that system is going. We also discussed where Invest 94W, or Luis, is headed. Still has an 80% chance of tropical development. There's around a 20% chance it doesn't develop. After this, though, the system is expected to meander out to the west and could develop near the Mariana Islands once again. So this is why that area is being highlighted there. Okay. So there is also a disturbance to the east of Dolphin. This is going to be this monsoonal mess just to the south of the system associated with Dolphin that could develop into something subtropical or tropical. Again, has a 50% chance of tropical development over the next 7 days. Out in the South China Sea, mainly in the Gulf of Tonkin here, there's a disturbance now with a 10% chance of tropical development that has just been marked today. In the North Indian Ocean, we still have the remnants of 93B, which is meandering along western India. In terms of our code system, we are code purple for Invest 94W or Luis. That means updates every day. We have upgraded now to code orange for Major Typhoon Dolphin. That would mean updates every 4 days. But of course, Luis takes priority, so this system is going to be seeing updates every day, at least for like the next 2 days or so. Nearly code black on the scale, mainly due to just how big of a threat it is for the Philippines. Now let's take a look at the satellite imagery of Luis out over here, Invest 94W. We can see a broad area of rotation out over here. There's a broad low pressure area to the east of all the thunderstorm activity. We can tell the system is getting sheared as much of the thunderstorms are off to the west, already impacting portions of northeastern Luzon and much of the Bicol region as well. We can see that on infrared imagery as well, with those cloud tops reaching some areas over or colder than minus 80 degrees Celsius, especially starting to push in to northern portions of Luzon. Could be seeing some of that rain already impacting areas like Metro Manila pretty soon. Looking at Typhoon Dolphin, it still has a well-defined eye. The system has completed another eye wall replacement cycle, so we can see just how massive that eye is with some mesovortices spinning on the inside. Very healthy system, and a pretty massive one too if we take a look at the zoomed out view on the system. Right over here, we can see the Mariana Islands down south over here. Japan is pretty far away, so it's not really visible on here. Let's take a look at the infrared imagery of the system. It's not looking as great as it could. Look, that's why the system is not a high-end Cat 4 or Cat 5, but it is getting a little bit healthier, especially on that western side over the past 6 to 12 hours or so. Do briefly want to look at Dvorak to kind of get a better idea of its satellite estimate. So this is it doing its eye wall replacement cycle right here. You can see the inner eye wall located right around here, and the outer eye wall out over here. Ultimately, the outer eye wall wins. There it is. Seems like it's struggling. It's still a Cat 4, but it is struggling. It's too massive for its own good. Water temperatures, though, they're warm, and we'll go over the environmental conditions now for both systems. 94W or Luis here, those waters are going to be remaining very warm throughout its forecast period. It's going to be around 30 degrees Celsius all the way throughout its track in the Philippines. Then when it exits, it's going to be around that 29 to 30 degrees Celsius range, so not a problem for that system. Dolphin, it's incredibly warm as well, 30 degrees Celsius, and it's expected to increase to pockets of 31 degrees Celsius later in its life, so waters are never going to be a problem for this system over the next 7 days. The other thing that may start being a problem is some dry air, and just due to its massive size here. So looking at the overall pattern for Dolphin, shear is not going to be a problem over the next 5 days at least. Sea surface temperatures are going to be very favorable for this system. The thing that might be a little bit of a problem is some dry air, and it's not really much of a moist system. I'm going to take a sip of water, then we'll go, or here, let me answer some questions. Let me just grab a sip of water, then I'll answer your questions. Alright, see who else is in the chat. We had Fuong there. So let me go back up here. Yeah, hopefully the microphone thing won't happen again. Yeah, I'm hoping that my microphone won't glitch out. Do you think Luis becomes a tropical depression before landfall in northern Luzon? I do think it will become a tropical depression. See here. Any updates on the storm? Let's see. Well, yeah, I mean, it's officially a tropical depression according to Pagasa. I don't think it's a tropical cyclone just yet, but it will likely become one before it makes landfall, or maybe after it makes landfall. I see. Muchiro, I'm trying to catch up. Do you think Dolphin would make landfall in Shanghai as a typhoon? It's a little bit far out there, but it's certainly possible. They are in that forecast cone within the next 7 days. It's a typhoon at this point, so it could be over here as a typhoon, could be over here as a typhoon, could be down here, could be up here. Really anywhere in this circle, this highlighted area right here, it could be a typhoon as we get into day 7. So it could make landfall in Shanghai as a typhoon. That's certainly possible. Alright, now I see questions about rainfall, so let's just go over the 10-day forecast now in the Western Pacific Basin. Then we'll go over the other model runs in terms of track and rainfall, those kind of things. So right now, this is what things are looking like right now. We have a broad monsoonal slop just to the southeast of Typhoon Dolphin, which is located right over here. We have Invest 94W or Luis down here, just to the southeast of just to the east of Luzon. We have the remnants of Fausto that are going to be crossing into the Western Pacific. Let's take a look at their current shear, what it's looking like right now. So let me go back up a little bit. There we go. We can see Luis is getting hit from some northeasterly shear right down here. That's why it's so lopsided with all its thunderstorm activity located out over here. Dolphins, not a problem right over here. And then the same thing that is experiencing a bit of a problem is going to be the remnants of Fausto, I believe. They're located right over here. Let me just take a look at what it looks like here. Yeah, getting hit with some easterly shear. Just that's part of the reason it's not going to develop. Another reason is just the cooler waters. Let's take a look at these steering mechanisms at this point. We do have this ridge right over here to the northeast of Typhoon Dolphin, a pretty strong one at that. The trough that once was forecasted to tug it out to sea is now retreating off to the northeast, and this ridge over western Japan, the Ryukyu Islands, this is starting to build back as well. We'll start seeing this ridge build right to the north of the system, which is going to be keeping it moving to the west. And overall, we have, of course, Luis down over here, which is going to be moving to the west, following the typical steering pattern that's normally in the western Pacific Basin for these tropical waves. So let's start with the forecast now. Let's go to tomorrow. So it'll be day one. We'll have maybe tropical depression or tropical storm Luis nearing Luzon. This would be around Isabela. And we have major typhoon Dolphin still out here and a broad area of low pressure located to the southeast of the system. Starting to close off on the western side, the remnants of Fausto are starting to dissipate out here in the western Pacific. Now let's take a look at the shear for all these systems. So the one to the southeast of Dolphin, not a problem. Dolphin, amazing upper level anticyclone. Fausto is dying due to that shear. 94W though, Luis here is in a pocket of somewhat lower shear, still getting hit with some easterly or northerly shear at this point, which is helping to prevent it from rapidly intensifying. Let's take a look at these steering mechanisms at this point. That ridge to the northeast of Dolphin does get very strong out here. We're seeing geopotential heights as high as 600 over here. So this is a very powerful ridge. We can see the ridge that's over the Korean Peninsula is also intensifying at this point, just starting to connect here and block out that trough from tugging it to the north. You can also see Luis out here going to be continuing moving off towards the west. Let's see how this has trended. Okay, trying to see if there's any difference in the model runs over the past day at this point. Not really seeing anything in terms of strengths of highs and lows, so no dramatic shift over the next day. Now let's go on to day 2. We'll likely be seeing a tropical depression Luis moving across Luzon. Major typhoon Dolphin continuing to track westwards. Another broad area of low pressure located just to its southeast. Fausto is now gone. Let's take a look at shear at this point. Shear is not much of an issue for that little low pressure area out over here. Dolphin, great upper level anticyclone, not an issue there. Luis is seeing some light to moderate shear at this point, but overall it's entering a pocket of some lower shear out over here. Let me just make sure my mic's working all right. Okay, good. All right, now let's take a look at the steering pattern at this point. This is where we'll see that ridge build to the north of the system, preventing it from moving north and escaping out to sea. Right over here, that trough is no longer strong enough to tug it out to sea. Got 2 ridges of high pressure right over here, going to be keeping the system moving west towards the Ryukyu Islands of Japan. We have Luis now entering the South China Sea, out over here. But now it's going to be starting to feel the influence of Dolphin out here, which may start to tug it back to the east. And then this other broad area of low pressure is just going to be getting dragged to the northeast. Looking to see if there's any big changes in the model run over the past day. Doesn't look like it on here. Everything's staying fairly consistent. Only thing I really notice is the ridge out over here does strengthen a little bit on the western side, but that doesn't change much for Dolphin. Now let's go out to 3 days out from now at this point. We do have tropical depression Dolphin now still over portions of northern Pangasinan. Major typhoon Dolphin continuing to track westwards. Then out over here, a broad area of low pressure located just over here. A little bit of a trough down here. Don't know what that's going to be doing. If we take a look at the shear for all the systems, this low pressure area is getting some great divergence to the northeast of the system. Great outflow. May see this system start to blossom. Not really as a tropical cyclone just yet. Typhoon Dolphin not seeing much issues out here. Same with Luis. Luis is in a pocket of lower shear. So again, not really a problem for this system. All right, now let's move on to the overall steering mechanisms at this point. That ridge does start to break down a bit to the northeast of the system. The issue, though, is right with what I just said. It's to the northeast of the system. At this point, it's too far west, and it's going to be moving along the southern periphery of the ridge over Japan. I see I mispronounced Luis and a dolphin. My bad. Luis over here, over portions of western Luzon. This system is going to start getting dragged into Dolphin. This other broad upper level low, this system's going to be just meandering it to the northeast, trying to follow this little escape route out over here. See if there was any major trends over the past day. Not really seeing anything here. Seems like everything has stayed fairly consistent. Now let's go on to day 4 now. Here we'll be seeing Typhoon Dolphin starting to approach the Ryukyu Islands. The remnants of Luis are now getting sucked into the system circulation, or mostly going to the east. This broad area of low pressure is starting to develop a little bit more to the east of Dolphin. Let's take a look at shear for all the systems. That low pressure area is getting heavily sheared from the south. Typhoon Dolphin, great outflow, great upper level anticyclone. 94W or Luis, though, is in a pocket of low shear, just not doing a whole lot well because it just went over land. It's getting dragged off to the east. Take a look at the upper level pattern at this point. The steering mechanisms will have this ridge to the northeast of that low pressure area and this ridge of high pressure to the north of Typhoon Dolphin. That's going to be keeping a Dolphin moving to the west towards the Ryukyu Islands. This broad upper level disturbance out over here is going to be starting to get dragged around the periphery of this ridge to the northeast. Then Luis is going to be getting dragged into the circulation of Dolphin. See if there was any major changes over the past day or so. Seems like the main difference I see is that ridge is getting a little bit weaker, or it's starting to split up a bit more between the one to the northeast of that low pressure area and the one to the north of Typhoon Dolphin, which may allow for this disturbance to get a little bit of a better escape opportunity. Now let's move on to day 5 here. Typhoon Dolphin does make landfall in the Ryukyu Islands. The remnants of Luis are still speeding off towards the east. We had another disturbance out here. The low pressure area starting to consolidate a little bit better. Also, if you have a keen eye, you may be able to notice a low pressure area starting to develop in the Gulf of Tonkin out here by Hainan Island in eastern Vietnam. So let's look at the upper level pattern at this point. Still getting some heavy south or southerly shear for this disturbance out here. Typhoon Dolphin, not a problem. Same with Luis. The disturbance out in the Gulf of Tonkin is underneath nearly an upper level anticyclone, so overall getting some low shear. The waters are warm, we may see something develop out of this. Let's take a look at these steering mechanisms at this point. That ridge that was to the north of Typhoon Dolphin does start to break down. Same with the one to the northeast of that low pressure area out over here. Overall, that low pressure area is going to continue to move to the north. Dolphin's going to be continuing to move mostly to the west, but may start to slow down a bit. And at this point, Luis is going to be continuing to move to the east. It may go too fast and start getting sucked up into the outer circulation here of that other disturbance. And overall, this other disturbance in the Gulf of Tonkin's also going to be getting dragged towards Typhoon Dolphin. So there's a lot of Fujiwara interactions going on out here as we get into day 5. Let's take a look and see if there's anything that's really trended. Thing that I've noticed over the past day is the ridge over Japan has trended a little bit on the weaker side. So that's why we've seen a Typhoon Dolphin trend a little bit farther to the north, still impacting the Ryukyu Islands though. Now let's move on to day 6 at this point. We do have Typhoon Dolphin pushing into the East China Sea. The remnants of Luis are continuing to move off to the east. It's just really a broad trough at this point. The system out over here, though, well to the east of Japan, is potentially a subtropical cyclone or even a tropical cyclone at this point. Taking a look at the upper level pattern, shear is low for that disturbance since it's nearly underneath an upper level low. Upper level anticyclone over Dolphin, so not a problem with shear for that system. Luis is under a pocket of low shear, and that other disturbance that was in the Gulf of Tonkin also is in a pocket of low shear, but it did get ripped apart a bit from Hainan Islands. Let's go forward, or let's take a look at the steering mechanisms at this point. Overall, we now have a trough that's strengthening quite a bit over just to the north of Japan and reaching the Korean Peninsula. The ridge to the northeast of that Japanese disturbance is starting to weaken a bit. Overall, that ridge that was to the north of Typhoon Dolphin does also weaken significantly. I believe that's going to be the main trend we'll see. Yeah, that trough has uptrended quite a bit. That ridge as well has shifted further to the east, and so that's why that disturbance to the east of Japan has trended even farther away from Japan. Overall, though, Typhoon Dolphin has stayed fairly consistent, at least on the day 6 forecast, entering the East China Sea, maybe getting nudged slightly further to the northeast. Now let's move on to from day 6 to day 7. At this point, Typhoon Dolphin is still pushing further west in the East China Sea, likely a tropical cyclone located well off to the east of Japan. The remnants of Luis are continuing to track further east, now approaching the Mariana Islands. Let's look at the shear at this point. Luis is getting heavily sheared. The tropical cyclone that's located to the east of Japan is getting some favorable outflow thanks to a jet interaction to the northeast, which may allow for it to quickly intensify. We'll see. And then out over here in the East China Sea, we do have, of course, Typhoon Dolphin underneath an upper-level anticyclone and starting to experience a jet interaction, which may allow for the system to intensify even further at this point. We will be seeing this trough out over here on the 500 millibar height anomalies. There it is. This is what's likely going to be tugging that disturbance to the east of Japan to the northeast. Got a ridge of high pressure as well, just really helping the system. The overall jet streams like this, so it's going to get sucked up into it, moving off to the northeast. Typhoon Dolphin, though, there's not much of a steering mechanism at this point, so this system's going to likely be stalling in the East China Sea. The remnants of Luis are going to be continuing to move off to the east around the periphery of this upper trough for that disturbance to the east of Japan. That's a look again at day 7. Now let's go further on towards day 8. Here we are. That other disturbance to the east of Japan is now likely a post-tropical cyclone. Typhoon or tropical storm Dolphin is nudging ever so closer to eastern China, including Shanghai. The remnants of Luis do start to now consolidate into a low pressure area instead of a trough. We got another low pressure area to the east of that system. Looking at the shear for all the systems out over here, generally they're in a low shear environment out over here. One storm that's really getting sheared is going to be the one that's to the northeast of Japan. This system's now turning into a post-tropical cyclone. Its jet interaction has now become unfavorable at this point. Typhoon or tropical storm Dolphin is experiencing that jet interaction over the Korean Peninsula in northern Japan. Overall, it's a pretty favorable environment at this point. Let's take a look at the upper level pattern, what it's showing. Well, we got a ridge that's strengthening to the northeast of that one disturbance out here, mainly just keeping it, just sucking it up into that trough and just going out to sea. The low pressure area to the east of the Mariana Islands, this would be the remnants of Luis, are going to be continuing to track a little bit to the east. Not going to know how long that's going to last. And then a Dolphin out over here, there's not much of a steering mechanism to really tell it where to go, so it's likely going to be continuing moving off just barely to the west. We'll see that here as we go from day 8 to day 9. At least on this model run, it has it going to the north. And then looking at the other disturbances here, we do have the remnants of that disturbance to the east of Japan initially. That system's out over here, a post-tropical cyclone. The remnants of Luis do start to get a little bit better organized. Same with this low pressure area to the east of that. Then we taking a look at the shear pattern at this point. Luis is in a pocket of low shear, which should allow it to intensify a little bit. That one disturbance is now underneath an upper level low, which may allow for it to become something subtropical. Not entirely sure. It's in a pocket of low shear. We'd have to wait and see. Dolphin at this point experiencing a favorable jet interaction near an upper level anticyclone. Not really an issue at all for that system. Then looking at the steering mechanisms at this point, we got this ridge of high pressure to the east of that one disturbance starting to strengthen. Luis is just going to be meandering wherever. There's nothing really to tug it to the north except for this one little disturbance out over here. And then at this point, the remnants of Dolphin look like they're going to be continuing moving off towards the north, towards the Korean Peninsula. And then just briefly seeing how things have trended over the past day. Not really quite sure entirely as to why Dolphin has trended suddenly so far to the east. I'm not really sure why it's trended so far to the east. Not sure this far out. All right, but let's now wrap it up by going to day 10. The remnants of Dolphin, likely still a tropical storm, are approaching South Korea. Luis over here is in a still just broad area of low pressure, trying to consolidate ever so slightly underneath a pocket of low shear. Dolphin at this point is now getting sheared, so the jet interaction does become unfavorable for the system. Steering mechanisms at this point looks like this, just broad areas of low pressure all throughout this region. These systems are all going to be really having a Fujiwara interaction. Dolphin at this point is just going to be moving off towards the northeast with this trough pretty much. Alright, and then looking at the remainder of the forecast here, Dolphin does eventually get sucked up into North Korea, eastern China, and then far southeastern Russia. The remnants of Luis do eventually try to form again, just to the east of Japan at the end of the model run, and that other low pressure area struggles to develop. It's mostly it for the 10-day range. Now let me see if let me get to the other models and I'll answer some more questions. Alright, now let's go over the HAFS hurricane model and what it is forecasting. Alright, so this is right now, this morning, still a Category 4 strength system. As we get into tonight, the system is expected to downgrade to a Category 3 strength system. Tomorrow morning, we could be seeing the system weaken down even further down to a Cat 2, is what the HAFS model suggests. This would be the case as well as we get into Monday night, so tomorrow night, still a Category 2 strength system. Even further as we get into Tuesday morning, starting to pass some of the far southern Japanese islands out over here, delivering some gale to storm force winds. Overall, Category 2 strength system on Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, the system weakens down to a Category 1. System moves further west here, still a Category 1 on Wednesday night. Some gale force winds do start approaching the coast of Japan on Thursday morning, with them really already happening as we get into Thursday night. Some of those storm force winds are also approaching the Ryukyu Islands. And as we get further into the forecast, Friday morning, that's when some of those storm to typhoon force winds start impacting the northern Ryukyu Islands. Overall, though, by Friday morning, no gale force winds are expected in portions of the Philippines, Taiwan, or eastern China just yet. All right, now let's take a look at the broad view of models out here. Let's see. Hold on. All right, let's start off with the American model run. Let me just do something real quick. All right, now looking at the various model runs, sorry about that. The American model run here at this point, we'll be looking at overall where it's expected to track the various systems here with 94W, and of course then Typhoon Dolphin. 94W, interestingly enough, for Luis, never gets organized on, at least on this model run. Later on it does as it gets to the Mariana Islands, but not when it's approaching the Philippines, which that's pretty interesting, I think. Alright. Then in terms of landfall for Typhoon Dolphin, it does have it making landfall in the southern Ryukyu Islands of Japan. This would be on Friday night into roughly Friday night into Saturday morning mostly. Then it eventually makes landfall near Fuzhou in China. This would be likely on the 10th morning. Then looking at the remnants here of Luis, wherever they go, it just has it meandering aimlessly over the next 15 days or so. So, I mean, the Western Pacific's just going to be so favorable for little spin-ups. We could be seeing many tropical cyclones out over there. So we're going to need to be tracking the system for potentially a while. Let's move on to the European model run and what it's forecasting. And over here, Luis does become a brief tropical cyclone, at least on this model run, then moves off to the east. Doesn't really become anything big, moves off towards Japan and then out to sea. Looking at Typhoon Dolphin, though, it does have it making landfall in the Ryukyu Islands. This would be on Thursday night, for then making landfall in mainland China. This would be on Saturday morning. Eventually, the system mostly dissipates, but may then try to reform in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is a very weird track. A Typhoon Dolphin starting all the way from the Central Pacific, moving all the way out over here, reaching the Gulf of Tonkin. That's insane. That's an incredible track for this kind of storm. This would be very interesting to watch, but very devastating in terms of the flooding that it would bring in those regions. Now let's move on to the Euro AI. We already pretty much discussed where it has those systems moving. Let's briefly look at timing again, though. So landfall in the Philippines looks likely by Monday night or early Tuesday morning. Eventually, a secondary landfall looks likely maybe by Wednesday night. Then a landfall in the Ryukyu Islands for Typhoon Dolphin appears likely on Friday morning. Then mainly mainland China around Fuzhou. This would be on the 10th, on Sunday night. Do you see the remnants of Luis? Then, at least on this model run, making landfall in Japan. This would be at around the 12th at night or the 13th morning. Jeez, these are the remnants of Dolphin out here making another landfall in China. This would be on the 15th morning. Now let's move on to the German model run, what it is expecting these various systems to do. 94W or Luis never gets organized on this model run, at least within the next 7 days. After that, it may become something. This model run, it does have Typhoon Dolphin making landfall in the Ryukyu Islands. This would be on Friday night or early Saturday morning. Now let's discuss the rainfall totals, as we had a question about that. See if I can find it again. Yeah, Pro Jambasa asked about La Trinidad in Benguet. So let me just grab this up over here, just so I can look at where Benguet is again, up over there. All right, now let's look at the various rainfall totals the system is expected to drop across the regions. Let's do the next 10 days to get a better idea of just how bad that flooding might be, as the habitat is expected to increase quite dramatically. So the entirety of Benguet here, including the area you're talking about, La Trinidad, is expected to see at least 40 inches of rain. That would be a meter. 1,000 millimeters of rain are expected to fall over the next 10 days. That would bring catastrophic impacts in these areas. It's a bit uncertain and it's a bit in the longer range. So that's why I haven't marked this area as guaranteed catastrophic impacts, but these areas could be seeing catastrophic impacts. Let's get further south. Some of these areas are around that 30-inch mark. 30 inches means around 750 millimeters. Metro Manila here gets 12 inches. That's around 300 millimeters of rain. And then some of these areas further south don't get as much. It's mainly the areas like La Union, Ilocos Sur, Abra, far western Kalinga, Mountain Province, Ifugaya, Nueva Ecija, Nueva Vizcaya, Benguet, Pangasinan, and then also Zambales. All these areas, and maybe western Tarlac, Pampanga, and maybe far northern portions of Bataan. These are the areas that could be seeing major to catastrophic flooding, at least from the American model run. Let's shift gears to now look at or briefly looking at the American model run at Typhoon Dolphin. Wherever it goes into the north and south of the system, could be seeing rainfall totals as high as 28 inches. That's 700 millimeters of rain. Taiwan could be seeing up to a meter of rain in those more mountainous regions. Now let's move over to the European model run, where it does have some locations, like Benguet's in the area you were asking about, could be seeing up to 30 inches of rain. That's 750 millimeters of rain. Areas in La Union get around 20 to 30 inches. That's 500 to 750 millimeters of rain accumulations. Western Zambales gets up to 30 inches. That's 750 millimeters. And Metro Manila here gets around 15 inches. That's almost 400 millimeters of rain. That is major impacts that the European model run is expecting. And some areas in western Mindoro could see up to 1,000 millimeters of rain in this 40-inch marked area. Let's look at Typhoon Dolphin. Generally lower rainfall totals. The highest I'm really seeing is up to around 300 millimeters, and maybe some areas in China could be seeing up to 500 millimeters of rain. Major flooding is possible with Typhoon Dolphin. Now let's move over to the European AI model run, which is showing a lot higher pockets that could be seeing rainfall totals of 900 millimeters or above. Anything you see in 35 inches or more, 35 or more here, is 900 millimeters or more of rain. So you can see that down here in Benguet, La Union, Pangasinan, all these locations here could be seeing catastrophic flooding. Same with Zambales. That's just because if the system stalls in the South China Sea, these areas are going to be hit with torrential rainfall. But it's a bit uncertain. That's why it's the possibility of catastrophic impacts and not guaranteed catastrophic impacts. Then looking north to Typhoon Dolphin, some areas here could be seeing up to 20 inches of rain. That's 500 millimeters of rainfall wherever the system eventually makes landfall. Taiwan could be also seeing 500 millimeters of rain. I think it's underdoing the rainfall in Taiwan because it's a low resolution model. So I think the models that are suggesting up to a meter are going to be ultimately the ones that end up being right. But we'll eventually see as time goes on. Now looking at the German model run, this is underdoing it a little bit because this only shows 7 days worth of rainfall. Benguet's here only gets anywhere from 100 to around 300 millimeters of rain. Out over here, La Union, the highest total out over here is going to be around 600 millimeters of rain for areas like San Fernando. That is catastrophic impacts still being forecasted just within the next 7 days. Metro Manila on this model run only gets around 170 millimeters of rain. Wherever the system's center goes, though, could drop up to a meter of rainfall. Even portions of the Ryukyu Islands here, at least on this model run, shows up to 800 millimeters of rain falling out there. All right, now let's answer some more questions in the chat. Again, if you have any questions, you can always leave them in the chat, and I will answer them in the order that they were asked. How about the third potential typhoon? What is its future path? That system, we already kind of discussed where that's going, right out over here. Going to be meandering mostly out to sea. It really doesn't impact the Philippines at all. The disturbance out over here, though, could end up impacting the Philippines. It's a little bit in the longer range, though. It might enhance the habitat even further, though. Guys, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I've been doing updates like this every day so far on the system's life. So if you haven't already, if you want to stay updated further on Luis and Typhoon Dolphin and other systems that might threaten your region in the Philippines, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date. Why does Pagasa forecast Luis to move northeasterly? They're more so accounting for the physics-based models like the European model run out over here. They believe that the physics-based models are going to win. I think the AI models are going to win. That's why I'm forecasting it to move across Luzon. Honestly, it could go either way, and that's why that forecast cone is large for a reason. Could go out like this, but overall, I think the forecast cone at this point would be or something like this, yeah. So like at least during this range. So I believe more likely than not it will cross the Philippines. I think around a 90% chance or so of it making landfall. We'll see what ends up being right though. Let's see. Yes, Code Purple is updated every updates every day. Minecraft Billy, you're right on that. Lee says, I don't know. I don't live in Manila, but I live in the Visayas region. Fortunately, the Visayas region is not expected to see impacts from this system. Hi, Noyoko official. Hope you're doing well. Oops, let me go back up to where I was at before. Possible Luis becomes a typhoon in the open waters in the Western Pacific. It's always possible, but I don't see that really happening. Maybe it becomes a weak tropical cyclone out there. It just looks like a broad area of circulation. Not seeing much of an uptrend or anything. We'll end up seeing if like the physics-based models are right or something like that, but it could, but I wouldn't be expecting that. Just let's focus on what it's going to be doing over the next 5 days or so first. Dolphin is ace farming, man. Yes, this storm is generating a lot of ace. I think it's generated over 20 ace or so. That system is expected to generate much more ace as time goes on. Let's look at the overview of tropics first, though. Oh, geez, we have a lot going on in the Atlantic here. Let me just refresh this. Interesting to see 3 disturbances marked out here. They're all pretty much the same system. I think just a tropical wave. Let's see if this works. There we go. There is the potential for a disturbance to develop off the eastern coast of Florida and impact the Carolinas. That system only has a 6% chance of developing. The other disturbances out here, though, I'm kind of curious to see what their chances. Okay, that's not the right system at all. Guessing none of these are going to be right. Yeah, that's not right. Yeah, this one's right, though. Only around a 4% chance of seeing some tropical development out of that. The Eastern Pacific, there is a disturbance out over here. Is this going to be the right one? Yes, it is. Okay. This system might ultimately form into something that's beyond the 7-day range, though. So this one could impact Baja California, but that's a bit far out. We do have another disturbance out here in the Eastern Pacific. Trying to see if this will load. I guess not. That's not really impacting anyone. This disturbance, though, may go off towards Hawaii. Ultimately, around 70% of the ensemble members show this forming, but this is beyond the 7-day range. Then looking out over here towards Typhoon at Dolphin, man, look at that beast of a storm. Additional ace that the system could generate, around 30 more ace units. So yeah, it is looking likely that this system will generate more ace than, like it's only generating around half the ace that's expected to generate. Now overall, this system, the 18 Zulu ensembles here, do have the system attaining a secondary peak out here. Some of them have it weakening as a low-end Cat 2, then it intensifies to a mid-range Cat 2. Out over here, it's a little bit uncertain, but the waters are warm enough and the outflow may get slightly better. The system, though, is expected to curve to the north, which is better news. It has it weakening further before making another landfall. Ultimately, I think all the ensemble model, or all the runs, have it at its full peak right now. Let me just double check, though. I mean, there's around a 5% chance it intensifies to a super typhoon again. Then Cat 5 looks very unlikely with this system. Looking at the disturbance to the east, that may ultimately become a... That is not it. This is weird, trying to click on the right disturbance. Yeah, I guess that's not going to work. My apologies for that. Hopefully this one will work, though. There we go. Now odds were at around 50% chance that the system develops. Now they're once again up to 72%. It was at like 90% yesterday. Then it went down to 50%. Now it went up to 70%. So it's back up to developing. I think though most of it, yeah, most of it's becoming a tropical storm after it passes through the Philippines. So that's pretty interesting out over here. And it does have it hooking towards Japan as we get in the next 7 days. I do think there's a chance it goes even further east than that, but look at how all the ensemble members are pretty much clustered of it moving around Typhoon Dolphin. That's pretty interesting. In terms of its peak, its probability of a peak, we already discussed again. 68% of them, I believe. Yeah, 68% of the ensemble members do have the system intensifying into at least a tropical storm. Severe tropical storm, there's roughly a 14% chance it reaches that intensity. Typhoon status, there's around a 1 to 2% chance it actually reaches typhoon status. And beyond that here, there are some model runs that are suggesting it could be even higher. Some of them, we got 7 members showing it becoming a major typhoon, 2 members showing it becoming a super typhoon. I'm assuming that's going to be mostly in the very longer range of the system. Huh. Okay, well, it doesn't allow me to go further than that, unfortunately. But that's in the very long range of the system. Right, then the disturbance out over here in the Gulf of Tonkin. Okay, now we're getting teleported out here, I guess. Okay. Again, the Leeward Islands could get impacted by a disturbance, but that's beyond the 7-day range. I'll talk more about that as we get closer in time to that system actually developing. What is ACE? ACE is accumulated cyclone energy. A good way to describe it is, let me pull up Dolphin again. Every 6 hours, you see every dot here, every 6 hours, a storm is fixed for how strong it is. A storm is analyzed. We try and figure out how strong that system is every 6 hours. So maybe it's a Cat 4 here, Cat 5, Cat 3, whatever. However strong the winds are, it generates points. That's the best way to think about it. A Cat 5, let's say it generates 3 points. A Cat 4 generates 4 points. Or sorry, Cat 5 generates 5 points. Cat 4 generates 4 points. Cat 3 generates 3 points. And so on. Let's just say that's how it works. It's not exactly the right amount of points. But then it would be like, if this was a Cat 5, it'd generate plus 5 points. Cat 4 over here plus 4 points. Cat 4 plus 4 points, that kind of thing. Then you add those points all together, and that's how you get your total accumulated cyclone energy. That's what ACE means. ACE is a decent metric of how well do storms avoid land. Because a storm that rapidly intensifies and makes landfall here doesn't generate as much ACE as a storm that's like a Cat 3 for such a long time. So that's basically the best way of explaining what ACE is. ACE doesn't necessarily mean how bad a storm will be, it just means how long has it lived as a strong storm. Johannes asks, how was your day, Chase? I'd say it's a very average day. I mean, I'm glad I can discuss this system and share it with you all, so that makes it a good day, seeing all the people in the chat who are taking the system seriously. That does make me happy to see that people are taking the system seriously. Hope your day is going well. Is it possible Luis dies out in the Philippine Sea because of dolphin? Yeah, it could get absorbed by dolphin. I have a feeling FOSTA will get invested by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. That's possible. I don't think they will, though. Chase, do you think Luis can intensify into a tropical storm before its first landfall? Any signs of Luis starting a rapid intensification? Not now. I mean, the system still does not have a well-defined center. It's possible, though, it becomes a tropical storm. If all this convection and thunderstorm activity does generate strong enough winds, we could be seeing already a tropical storm out of it. I think, though, that the winds are just too weak. Overall, it's too much of a naked circulation. ASCAT did show that the center is mostly closed on the eastern side, just that the winds are very weak. Yeah, time is ticking for Luis. Yeah, that's the issue for it. Is it still possible Luis enters the Philippine Air Responsibility? I mean, it kind of already did. I think you're asking about dolphin, I'm assuming. Dolphin, there's a chance it does. Let me look at the forecast cone here. Again, mostly it's going to be. Oops, let me do this instead. The Philippine Area of Responsibility, I believe something like. I guess not that high north. Something like this. Overall, the center pretty much enters the Philippine Area of Responsibility. We'll see. Could a three-way Fujiwara effect happen? Um, that's a little bit interesting. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I mean, the main three-way that's going to be happening is going to be between Dolphin, Luis, and this other disturbance out over here. Let me just check this again. Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think that if a three-way were to happen, it would be between Luis, Dolphin, and that other little guy out over there. So, like, I mean, like getting moved off towards the east, towards that disturbance there. That'd be the three-way Fujiwara interaction between all those disturbances. Like, because the main two that are expected to interact would be between Dolphin and Luis down over here. Luis would get dragged into the southern end of Dolphin, and it may get then picked up by that other disturbance, but ultimately these two disturbances, this one out over here, and then Typhoon Dolphin, never really interact. The only way that they kind of interact is the monsoonal slop that's to the south of Dolphin, partially associated with it, gives birth to a disturbance that ultimately gives birth to another disturbance. That's the main way that they're related, which I think that's actually pretty cool. All right, let's see here. How much rainfall in Baguio City? I'd mainly look at the European model run, like the Euro AI, excuse me, for that. Where'd it go? There it is. Baguio City. Let's look at the next 10 days here. Baguio City, the Euro AI is predicting up to 40 inches of rain. That would be a meter of rain at the most. American model runs predicting over a meter. European models runs predicting around 750 millimeters of rain. German runs predicting at 10 inches. That's going to be really, I'd say anywhere between 400 and 1100 millimeters of rain could fall in Baguio City. So major to catastrophic impacts are expected there. Yeah, guys, I haven't really added moderators in the chat as that'd be too, like Misfortune says, it's a little bit that'd be a little bit too strict. I want everyone to have their fun and ask their questions, whatever. If there's anyone trolling, the best thing to do is just ignore it, really. Dolphin's going to pull the moisture out of the Gulf of Tonkin. Yes, pretty much. It's broad circulation. Let me go back to this here. Let me see if there's another way I can show it. Yep, right over here. Its broad circulation is going to be pulling anything else, anything that was in the Gulf of Tonkin out of there. And you'll see that Habagat getting enhanced quite a lot from both systems. We got Luis out over here, and we also got Dolphin and over here really enhancing that Habagat as the system starts entering the East China Sea. So we will see, most likely, Dolphin start impacting portions of the Philippines, like, as you guessed it, with like Bavi did a while back. Not even a while back. It hasn't been that long. How much rainfall in Dagupan in Pangasinan? Dagupan, Pangasinan. Now, the German model run shows around 7 inches of rain. That's not a whole lot, but this is just over the next 7 days. So that's 200 millimeters of rainfall at the low end over the next 7 days. Let's increase this, though, up to the next 10 days. Dagupan does get around 660 millimeters of rain. That is a lot. European run gives it around 300 to 400 millimeters of rain. And the GFS, the American models, showing 25 millimeters of rain. So we could be seeing anywhere from really 200 millimeters to, I'd say, 700 millimeters of rainfall. So mainly in that moderate to catastrophic impact category for flooding out there. Rainfall reports are being experienced in Aurora. Interesting. Yeah, Luis is already starting to bring some of those heavy rainfall across Aurora, Isabela, right out over here. Even likely seeing it impacting Camarines Norte and maybe Camarines Sur. Also starting to approach Luzon, the Luzon portion, like the main island of Quezon. And then we'll soon start approaching Rizal and then Metro Manila if it hasn't already. How much rainfall in Bataan in monsoon enhanced by Dolphin? Let's look at Bataan again, out over here. The European AI model run, the American model run's predicting generally totals of around 10 to 14 inches of rain. That's going to be around 250 to 350 millimeters of rain. That's just that model run. The Euro run's predicting anywhere from 12 to 28 inches. That's 300 to 700 millimeters of rain. That would be catastrophic if that were to happen. Euro AI is predicting around 18 to 24 inches of rain. That's going to be around 450, as high as 600 millimeters of rain. Again, potentially catastrophic. The German model runs those predicting a lot less, around 40 to up to around 150 millimeters of rain. So there's a lot of different case scenarios that happens with this system. I would be predicting moderate to major impacts. That would be anywhere from 200 to 600 millimeters of rain in those locations. Chase, did you see the weather in Europe today? Literally the fuel for tornadoes. Haven't really looked at that. That's pretty interesting. Europe getting some tornadic activity. You don't hear that every day. Don't know where exactly that's been happening. I guess across Poland, those areas. Okay, I can kind of see that. If Dolphin makes it somehow in the Gulf of Tonkin, that would be one crazy track, yeah. If Luis ultimately makes landfall in Japan, that would also be a crazy track. How much rainfall is expected in Casiguran, Aurora, in Baguio City? Let's go for Aurora there. Is that the area I was looking at once? I'm not sure. I'll look it up for you. Let's see, we got this location. Casiguran, Aurora. Okay, it is going to be, looks like the northern portions of Aurora. Yeah, it looks like it's right over here, I believe. All right, so let's just look at the totals. I'll individually pick it up with the picker here. 3 inches of rain is expected from the German model run. That's 75 millimeters of rain. The main Euro run shows around 5 inches. That's around 125 millimeters. Euro AI shows around 6 inches. That's around 150 millimeters. And the German run showing 7 inches. That's around 175 millimeters of rain. Anywhere really from 100 to 200 millimeters of rain, I'd say, are expected in that area. So slight impacts are expected. We got Baguio City as well that was asked. Again, Baguio City could be seeing over a meter of rain. See, anywhere from really like 200 to, or not even just 200, I'd say 400 to 1100 millimeters of rain could fall in Baguio City. That's major to catastrophic impacts are possible there. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for asking about or for mentioning where that town is. Unfortunately, both aren't even displayed on the map. A bust like Haishin and Nuri. Yeah, I'm guessing you're talking about Dolphin. Dolphin did bust quite a bit because of its high wall replacement cycles. Now, I know that people would be saying, oh, like you should hope for it to bust. The problem with this scenario is it's such a massive storm. Now, because it busted, it's going to be a worse impact for portions of Japan, China, all these areas, because not only are we going to be seeing heavier rainfall totals, but those typhoon force winds, storm force winds, gale force winds are going to be much larger now. Some of those gale force winds could be up to 900 to 1,000 kilometers in diameter. That's how massive the system is. So you got Luis in the chat here. Somebody named Luis. Chase, if Code Black should be posted a forecast twice, one in the morning and one at night if the system has Code Black. Not really needed in my opinion because like the forecast doesn't change dramatically over like the 5-day range. So I just do one forecast per day, like right before I do my live stream. Is Dolphin a potential rainfall threat for Hong Kong if it makes landfall somewhere along the lines of central or southern Taiwan, that makes landfall near Quanzhou or Chaoyang? Ultimately, the system could pose a threat to Hong Kong. They aren't in the forecast cone of uncertainty just yet, so I wouldn't be worried about like getting supplies just yet. Just continue monitoring the forecast. I'll keep you updated, so make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And ultimately, Hong Kong isn't expected to see much impacts from Dolphin just yet within the next 7 days. As we get into tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we could start seeing a little bit better consensus as to where the system will go beyond the 7-day range. We already saw the European model run earlier trying to make it book towards Hong Kong and then the Gulf of Tonkin, but the Euro AI, the most recent run now, has it jogging to the north, so ultimately we don't know where the system is going to be going exactly. Any update on the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific in the Euro AI run? Let's take a look at that here. Eastern Pacific. There isn't a whole lot expected. There's a little bit of some tropical waves that try and get going. There is one by the Central Pacific that may impact Hawaii, but that's beyond the 10-day range. North Atlantic, there's that one tropical wave beyond the 10-day range that may try and organize, but it's just too far out to really know for sure. Jace, do you agree that Japan Meteorological Agency, they said Luis is at 35 knots with gust up to 50 knots. So wait, has the Japan Meteorological Agency named it yet? Doesn't make sense. They said it's 30 knots and 45 knots in gust. Yeah, that would make more sense. It's likely not a tropical storm just yet. I'm not sure, does the JMA have it as a tropical depression or not? Alright, let's see what else is in here. Sorry, let me just get a sip of water. Poor Chase, he's reading comments from 40 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm trying to catch up, okay? I like answering every single thing here. Is Dolphin a rival of Bavi or not? I'd say it is. It's doing a similar track to Bavi, especially beyond the, like over the next 5 days or so, its forecasted track. It also became a super typhoon, kind of close where Bavi was. I mean, in between the Mariana Islands and the international dateline. So it is doing something similar to what Bavi did not too long ago. And it may ultimately end up striking the same areas of the Ryukyu Islands and ultimately mainland China. It's possible that the Habagat has storm force winds. It's possible any of those areas that see, you know what, we can even pull it up here on the American model run. Let's take a look at the 10-meter gust. Here, it does deliver some nearly storm force gusts. Yeah, some areas get nearly typhoon force gusts. That's pretty interesting. I've never seen it getting... I mean, I haven't really paid attention to just how gusty the Habagat can be. Yeah, this does show winds very strong near the surface, wind gusts as high as 50 miles an hour or so. That is pretty interesting on here. I mean, it's mainly going to be from, of course, Typhoon Dolphin. That's going to be what really delivers the impacts. Let me just share the stream real quick. Just someone else I know. Again, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and be sure to like the stream if you haven't already. All right. Let's see. So again, the Habagat it is possible that it has storm force winds. Metro Manila here could see wind gusts size around 46 miles an hour. That's getting very close to some storm force winds. Areas further north in like Pangasinan, they are expected to see storm force winds, at least from the American model run. Curious to see what the other runs show. The Euro does not show wind gust. German model as well does not have wind gusts, at least on that model run, or the model suite. Jeez, how much rainfall in there? Oh yeah, I answered that. Rainfall in Trinidad Benguets, already answered that. Richie, I could ultimately end up doing a 5 to 7 day possibility of impacts from rainfall. For right now, though, I'm trying to lock in like that forecast cone, maybe start shrinking its size, as I've seen the accuracy continuing to get better. So I might ultimately then finally add the potential of seeing some rainfall impacts from the system. Just a little bit far out though, as 5 to 7 days of impacts is kind of hard to nail down. But I might ultimately do, like you said, like show which areas could be seeing impacts, not just the forecast cone of the track, but what areas could be seeing impacts. Let's go back up here. All right. So you expect to be okay. Is it possible that southern Japan gets major impacts? Depends what you mean by southern Japan here. If you're talking about the mainland islands of Japan, I wouldn't really be expecting major impacts, only marginal to slight impacts. If the system goes on the northern end of the forecast, they could be seeing some storm to even typhoon force winds. But major impacts could be possible for the Ryukyu Islands if it moves through as like a Category 3 strength system. There is, again, that round of possible re-intensification as it gets closer to the Ryukyu Islands over the next 4 to 5 days. So there is the possibility they see major impacts. I haven't highlighted it just yet, as I think it's going to be a low-end Cat 2 at that point. Maybe a mid-range Cat 2, not a Cat 3. After Dolphin, what's next in the Western Pacific? Well, we have 2 disturbances we're watching out here. Kind of 3, actually. We have this disturbance out here that's going to be meandering to the east of where Dolphin is with a 50% chance of tropical development. That system should ultimately end up going out to sea. Invest 94W out over here, this system, or Luis, of course. That system could ultimately try to reform by the Mariana Islands as we get later down the road. Then after these, or along with Luis, there's a disturbance out in the Gulf of Tonkin with a 10% chance of tropical development. This system could briefly become something. JMA does have it as a tropical depression. Interesting. Thanks for letting me know, Misfortune. I don't think it's a tropical cyclone just yet. I don't think that the center of circulation is organized enough just yet. It may start getting close, though. As we can see, somewhere just north of the Katanawanas, a little bit of a better defined center of circulation. The convection's doing pretty well. I do believe it has sustained, at least somewhat, over the past 12 hours or so. Yeah, I mean we're getting there. We're getting there closer to tropical cyclone status. Maybe over the next 4 hours or so, it may be a tropical cyclone by then. All right, let's see here. Yeah, like all the Cat 5s are related on where they have been tracking. You're right on that. They've been mostly far out to sea. This is what you'll typically see in El Nino years, forming well to the east of the Philippines and even east of the Mariana Islands. All right. Is Gulf of Tonkin system becoming tropical, like a tropical storm? There is the chance it does that. I was trying to mark it on here, but it didn't want to cooperate when I selected that disturbance. Let's see if this works. There it goes. In terms of it's becoming a tropical storm, the probabilities are around a 17% chance that actually ends up doing that. Severe tropical storm status is going to be around a 7% chance. And then a typhoon strength system or higher is around a 3% chance. It's uncertain as it's a little bit in the longer range, just beyond the 7-day range for when it could reach its peak. See, will Dolphin be striking China again? It's not fully set in stone just yet. They are in that cone of uncertainty of where it could be within the next 7 days. But some of the Google DeepMind and Zama members have started to suggest it moving northwards away from China, maybe off even further to the east towards the Korean Peninsula. So it's not set in stone that it will make landfall in China just yet. Let's see, go back up here. All right, still trying to catch up to the live chat. The beak hole in southern Luzon. Fortunately, in that location, you aren't expected to see as much impact. Some of the areas in the beak hole region aren't expected to see any impacts from the disturbance, but you may start seeing impacts as a typhoon dolphin starts moving through, increasing that habagats, as we showed on some of those earlier model runs here. Let's go back over here to the American model run, the wind gust. Overall, there will be some impacts felt from Typhoon Dolphin here from that habitat on the western side, or really just the central Philippines. All these areas could be seeing at least marginal impacts from this system. Maybe it's better to just check the winds. What are the highest winds from the system? Yeah, I mean, some areas could be getting close to some gale force winds, like sustained winds. It's pretty interesting that a typhoon that far away is causing gale force winds in those locations. Especially if the system starts making a southern jog at the very end of that run towards, this would be, I believe, Fujian province of China, then off towards Hong Kong, then yeah, that would increase the impacts being felt across Luzon and especially the Bicol region as they're further south. Southern Japanese islands, possibility of major impacts. I think you're talking about the Sekishima Islands of Japan. They're a little bit on the southern end of it. I believe they're only highlighted as marginal impacts as of right now. I would not be expecting major impacts with this area because if it does enter the East China Sea, it should be weakening down to a Cat 1 or Cat 2. This could change though as we get further on in time, but I'll continue to update you on that. Dolphin looks like Florence 2018. It does a bit. It does a bit. It's an annular kind of storm. This means it's pretty much symmetrical. Has nearly a truck tire kind of eye to it. Yeah, it does look very similar to Florence. It's a Cat 4, just like Florence was in the Atlantic back in 2018. Heavy rain over here in Bulacan right now, says Pyro. I definitely believe that. We can see the Luis right over here, starting to push some of those heavier rainfall. Now, we can't see radar for the entirety of the region out here, but yeah, some of those thunderstorms are starting to push further inland into portions of Luzon. Now, this is as we'll start seeing the flood threat increase over the next day or so. This is it starting right now. These impacts that you are seeing are going to be the beginning of Luis's impacts. Try and catch up here. Chase, how many ace has been gathered in the Western Pacific season this far? Let's pull up AAA Tropics developed by my friend Adler here. Look at the Western Pacific, 164 ace units have been generated. This puts it above, I believe that's the 25th percentile. I'm not exactly sure. Wish there was a legend here for that. But we are ahead of 1997 in terms of ace, which did ultimately break the record for most ace in a Typhoon season ever. So we are ahead of them right now, but we aren't number one year to date in terms of all the seasons. We still got 1971, 72, 76, 2004 and 2, 1958 and 2015 are all ahead of us in terms of ace right now. We are number 8 though, out of all seasons that are listed here, which is a total of 82. So we are doing quite well in terms of ace units. We're around 200%, I believe, of what the average is. Let me just double check. Yeah, 217% of what the normal ace is. And this system is expected to generate an additional like 30 ace or so. So we should be up to around 195 by the time things are done, which means we should be ranked in the top 5 year-to-date ace once the system finally dissipates. So here, will Luis's track bring beneficial amounts of rain, mostly in the Angat Dam? Don't know where that is. I'm going to search it up real quick. That is in... Huh. Okay, that's there. Yeah, I'd say it would be bringing beneficial rain there. If they're... Yeah, there we go. That's where they're located at. If they're in a drought, there would be seeing some more rainfall from the system, moderate impacts rainfall. So total rainfall amounts are going to be around 200 to 300 millimeters, I'd say, over the next 5 days. Maybe seeing more than that. So yeah, they could be seeing some beneficial rain if they are seeing a little bit of a dryness, a little bit of a drought. Andrew says, Chase, you forgot to cover how many kilometers away the system is. Thanks for reminding me again. I know you reminded me yesterday. Let's go over it here. So this is the Luis right now. Let's go to where it's located at right around now. It's around 400 kilometers to the east-northeast of Metro Manila. Wherever it makes landfall, likely around Aurora, it's around 300 kilometers away from making landfall. Santiago is around 400 kilometers to its northwest. Baguio City's around 460 kilometers to its west-northwest. And then looking at some other areas, let's go to Santa Ana's around 460 kilometers to the northwest of the system. That's mainly it for that. But now let's look at Typhoon Dolphin here, which they're still expecting it to be a Cat 2 nearing the Ryukyu Islands as we get into Friday morning. Let's look at the distance. It's around 2.5 thousand kilometers to the east-southeast of the Ryukyu Islands of Japan. Tokyo is around 1,900 kilometers to the northwest of the system. Shanghai is 3.3 thousand kilometers to the west-northwest of it. Taipei in Taiwan's 3.2 thousand kilometers to its west. And the system is around 3.5 thousand kilometers to the north or east-northeast of Metro Manila. Hong Kong is around 4,000 kilometers away west of the system. South Korea's around at 2.8 thousand kilometers to the west-northwest of it. So that's roughly the distance, and let's briefly discuss the Mariana Islands. Guam's around 1,300 kilometers, and Rota Antini is around 1,100 kilometers to the southwest of Typhoon Dolphin. So they're fortunately very far away from the system impacting them, which they've already seen major impacts from Sinlaku and Bavi. Glad that Dolphin is not impacting them again. Is there a chance Dolphin causing slight impacts in Hong Kong if it does move south after landfall? And will gale force winds be felt in Hong Kong after 7 days. Again, it's a little bit far out to be discussing impacts in Hong Kong. They're not even in the forecast cone just yet. There's always the possibility that they see some impacts from the system. It's just, again, far out, so we can't be talking about what kind of impacts they could be seeing. Some of the ensemble members, I don't really see any landfalls in Hong Kong. The closest track would be down here. Click on this. See it a little bit better. Some of the ensemble member runs do have it making landfall and then moving over Hong Kong. None of them really have it making landfall in Hong Kong, though. Let's see here. Is it possible Taiwan getting possibility of it major to extreme impacts? I think, unfortunately, we will be seeing that get added. Just because, we've seen this with, for example, Bobby recently. Anytime that there's a major typhoon that rolls very close to Taiwan, they'll see major to catastrophic impacts in some of the more mountainous regions. Just up to 40 inches of rain or 1,000 millimeters of rain are possible in that location. Chase, are you going to do a landfall coverage for Luis? Nope, but I will be doing daily updates as well. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. So again, I'm going to be doing daily updates on Luis, and so I may be even doing more updates on Dolphin as that eventually starts threatening the Philippines a bit more with the Habagat. The dams, I'm not exactly sure. I'm not well versed in the dams across the Philippines. Yeah, Richie, by 2027, I might be adding that the possibility of 5 to 7 day impacts. That's a good idea. In Naga City, which is located, I believe, right around here, rainfall totals over the next 10 days looks like this here. Around 7 inches, that's going to be around 175 millimeters, is expected from the American run. European run showing 6 inches, that's around 150 millimeters. And then the German model run's only predicting around 25 millimeters of rain, which obviously it's going to do more than that. You're already likely seeing above 25 millimeters right now. European AI is showing around 200 millimeters of rainfall, so somewhere in that 100 to 200 millimeter range. So they are expected to see slight impacts from the storm. Is Luis expected to make landfall south of Aurora? Let's take a look at all the landfall locations, or like the landfall probabilities as to where it will ultimately make landfall. I believe, hopefully, these are all the ensemble members. Close enough. Whoops, okay. I didn't mean that. Okay, let's see if I can get this running again. There we go, that's all 50 of them. In terms of the probability it makes landfall in Aurora. Alright, let me just split them in two mostly. Okay, geez. It's going to be a little bit of a lot of work, so let me just refresh it and try and do this again. Try and figure out where that landfall will be. Oh, geez, I see why it's difficult. All the lines go, they double back. I forgot about that. So this gets very interesting. Also, just look at how uncertain where the system is going to be going over the next 6 hours. That's another reason why the forecast is very uncertain. We haven't really seen that center circulation develop solidly. I think it's going to go on the more southern end, though, as we've seen much of the convection happening on the southern end of that circulation. So we're already starting to see it close off a little bit better out over here. So we're very close to a tropical cyclone with this system. Well, let's take a look at that landfall probability again if we can get a general idea of it here. So the border is located, that's Isabella, there's Aurora. There's around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Say around a 25% chance it makes landfall in Aurora. I did split it like 50-50, maybe a 40% chance in Aurora, 60% chance in Isabela province. That looks like the most likely case scenario. If Luis intensify, could it get to tropical storm strength? Yes, it could. It could even become a severe tropical storm. It's just a bit uncertain as it has to cross Luzon first. Is it possible do the Fujiwara effects occur? Yes, that's what is expected to occur between Dolphin and um, Dolphin and Luis here. See that happening right over here. So as Dolphin approaches the Ryukyu Islands, that's what causes Luis to get sucked in to the circulation there. But then eventually it leaves and then just goes out to wherever. I mean, if your trip starts on the 25th of August in Japan, I wouldn't really be expecting it to ruin it because this model run only goes out to August 16th, and that's very inaccurate that far out. So can't really know for sure, but I don't think the system will be around by that time. I guess city's in the Camarine Sur. Oh, sorry about that. What makes Dolphin so unpredictable in the 7-day range? It's mainly a breakdown in the steering pattern at that point. We'll see that on here. Pretty much the main steering mechanism right now is this ridge of high pressure that's going to be building out over here, keeping the system moving mostly due west. After that, though, it's quite uncertain where it's going to go. There's a little ridge out over here trying to block it from moving further into China, a little trough over Japan. I may want to tug it to the northeast. Ultimately, this model run has it moving to the north. But one of the previous runs also has it just continuing to move to the west. I think the main reason between these two is going to be this trough that develops over eastern China. If it's stronger, it's going to then start tugging it off towards the north and east. If it's weaker, it might just keep going off towards the west. How much rainfall on Polillo Island? I've heard of that. Let me try and figure out where that is. Okay, it's right there. It's part of Quezon. There it is. All right, so Polillo Island. Hopefully, I'm pronounced Polillo Island. Poliho Island. Poliho. Poliho. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. Rainfall totals over the next 10 days. This is the European AI model run. Around 5 inches. That's 125 millimeters of rain. European runs showing the same thing. American model runs showing around the same thing. And German runs showing less, up to only 25 millimeters. I think 150 millimeters is a safe bet there. So they are expected to see marginal impacts from this storm. Not a whole lot. Maybe they'll see slight impacts as we get further on beyond the 5-day range when Dolphin starts influencing the region. Probability of that tool is accurate. Depends on what tool you're talking about. Naga City in Bicol, rain totals. Yes, sorry about that. I butchered where that was located at. Let me try and figure that out again. Naga City right over here. Rainfall totals, German model runs only showing around 25 millimeters of rain. American showing 100 millimeters. Euros showing around 100 millimeters. And Euro AI is also showing 100 to 125 millimeters of rain. Generally, only around, I'd say, 25 to 100 millimeters of rainfall, but still not expected to see even marginal impacts over the next 5 days. That's mostly beyond the 5-day range. Are there any wind signals in the provinces in the Philippines? Yes, there are. We do have Signal 1 warnings in effect for Polillo Islands in Quezon there, the Camarines Norte, portions of northeastern Camarines Sur, and the Catanawanas are also under a Signal 1 warning. Mammers confirms that it is raining now in Santiago. So that makes sense. We can see all the thunderstorm activity pushing further to the west here. See that on radar imagery as well here. Starting to push further and further inland. Radar doesn't do really a great job of picking it up here, but we can see some rain there. Portions of Santiago. A lot of the radars aren't that great, so we can't fully tell if it's raining down in Metro Manila, but I'd suspect it is. Is it possible that there could be a typhoon next week? It's always possible, but I don't think so. I'd count against that. Chase Pagasa start giving information on Dolphin. Yes, they've done advisories on it, so we do have signal warnings. Dolphin. Yes. My bad, I thought you were talking about Luis. Dolphin, yes, I saw that they were now marking it, or at least recently marking it as a super typhoon. Possible Dolphin makes landfall in South Korea as a tropical storm. That's also possible. That's if it goes on that more northern end of guidance, which we've been seeing the Google DeepMind ensemble members shifting further to the north. So there is the possibility it makes landfall there. It's just so uncertain how quickly it makes that northward turn. Some of them have it as north as mainland Japan. Some of them have it never making that turn, moving off towards Taiwan and then eventually Hong Kong. Thank you, Chase. Of course. How much rainfall in Cavite? We check that out. Cavite is going to be right over there. Cavite is down over here. German model run is showing, this is the Euro AI, excuse me. Euro AI is showing rainfall totals of up to around, let's see, this is Cavite, yes, 12 to 16 inches of rain. That's going to be around 300 to 350 millimeters of rain, I believe. No, 300 to 400 millimeters of rain, excuse me. So that is going to be major impacts, or at least possibility of major impacts, but this is mostly within the next 10 days. This is the influence of two systems, Luis and Dolphin. So let's go over both rainfall totals. Since we have a question for Metro Manila, no worries. You can always ask questions in the chat if you have them. Metro Manila here, they get around 17 inches of rain. That's going to be around, let me make sure I get this right. It's going to be around 430 millimeters of rain over the next 10 days. That's the Euro AI. Shifting over to the American model run, Cavite gets around 7 to 12 inches of rain. That's around 180 to 300 millimeters of rain. Metro Manila get up to around 300 millimeters of rain. Moving on to the Euro run, not the AI, but the actual Euro run. Metro Manila, they get around 14 inches, 350 millimeters, and Cavite get anywhere from 10 inches to 22 inches. That's 250 up to around 550 millimeters of rain. German model run over the next 7 days. This doesn't include a lot of the impacts that Dolphin will eventually bring. Metro Manila gets around 6 to 9 inches of rain, looks like here. It's going to be around 150 to around 220 millimeters of rain, where Cavite gets around 25 to 100 millimeters of rain. Is that Invest 94W? Yes, this one right here is Invest 94W. That is Luis. It hasn't been named yet by an agency outside of Pagasa. Dolphin out here is named that because it's a name Hong Kong submitted once and it's in the rotation. Yes, Villar Jr. did get that right, yeah. World Meteorological Names. How much rainfall in the Batanas? Good question, since they could be seeing impacts from both systems. German model run only gives them around 25 to 50 millimeters of rain over the next 7 days. American model run as we get into the 10-day range, same thing, 25 to 150, or sorry, 25 to 50 millimeters rain. European run, same thing, but around 50 to 75 millimeters. German runs, already went over that. Euro AI, not a whole lot, around that 25 to 50 millimeter range. They're not expected to see a lot of rain. They could be seeing some gusty winds, I'd imagine, though. Let me see what the GFS thinks. I think winds might actually be their worst impact here. Yeah, they could be seeing some storm force gust over 60 miles an hour. That is going to be, let me just double check what that is. I know I have it on here. That would be around 100 kilometer an hour winds are going to be possible in those areas, mainly wind gusts. Interesting to see typhoon force wind gusts will be possible out over here to the south of the Sakishima Islands. Even the Sakishima Islands could be seeing typhoon force gusts with the system. Okay, well that didn't work there. Euro AI does show them getting gale force sustained winds, which that's pretty interesting. Wondering if I can see that on here. Yeah, some gale force winds down there from the outer edge of the system, meaning that they could be seeing some marginal impacts from Typhoon Dolphin. Do you think that Luis is going to hit Cavite? No, I don't think it's going to make landfall in Cavite, but Cavite will still be seeing some slight to moderate impacts, depending on how close you are to the coast. Will Luis be critical to Dolphin's track after 7 days and its potential impacts in Hong Kong? Not beyond the 7-day range, but beyond within the 5-day range. I think it will have an impact. I don't think it's going to be critical, but I do think it will have some sort of an impact. Maybe it does have a critical impact. Maybe it really just depends on how strong of a system it is. If the system is able to quickly organize after leaving the Philippines, then that could tug the system further to the south. It's a little bit of a, how to say it, yin and yang, pretty much. It's based on how strong, how dominant is Dolphin over Luis. If Luis is stronger, then there's that little bit of a less dominance of Dolphin, and so it gets nudged a little bit down to the south. It's like a center of gravity. Imagine that, okay? The center of the two rotations. If this was Dolphin a Cat 3 and this was Luis a Cat 3, the center rotation would be right over here. But since that's not the case, we have a Dolphin out over here, which is a Cat 3, and Luis over here, which is just a disturbance. The center of rotation's like all the way up over here. So this doesn't really nudge Dolphin that far down to the south, but this swings Luis closer to Dolphin. So however strong Luis gets, that will nudge the center of their rotations further down to the south, which will help tug Dolphin further down to the south. So yeah, Luis does play a critical role in a Dolphin's track. What do you think is the worst typhoon this year? Oh geez, let me just check the Pacific typhoon season again. I don't know if Sinlaku was. Let me just look at the damages and deaths. See, Bavi caused around 141 million. Sinlaku caused 1.5 billion. I'd say Maysak was. Yeah, Maysak was probably the worst storm out of the bunch. Caused over $3 billion in damages and caused over 50 deaths. That's probably been the worst storm. Yeah, Maysak, somebody already said that. This question, I think likely Dolphin moving northeast turns because the high pressure in eastern China blocking it moving to the west. That's possible. It's just a bit too far out. How much wind speed is Luis? Around, I'd say 25 to 30 miles an hour right now. Feeling on Genevieve's animation, Chase will put its peak at 135 knots instead of 140 because I suddenly remembered about Horatio 2026. I'm not entirely sure what its peak is. I'm about to reanalyze that maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow, but I do think it was a Cat 5. Operationally, I do have it as a Cat 5. It's possible that Luis strengthens into a severe tropical storm. It is possible. I think the chances, though, are quite low on that. Briefly pull it up. This looks a little bit different. Now it's showing 81% of the ensemble members have it becoming a tropical storm. Severe tropical storm, there's around a 15 to 16% chance it actually reaches that intensity. What's the strongest southern hemisphere storm in your opinion, Chase? You'd have to look at my animations. I don't fully remember that. 7.24 thousand subscribers. Yeah, thank you all so much for all the support. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can stay updated on this storm and other storms that may threaten the Philippines or other areas in the Western Pacific like Hong Kong, Japan. Any of these areas, I'll try do my best to keep you all updated. Chase, what will you do when you hit 10K? I believe my plan is I'm going to start actually uploading more video updates instead of live streams. I'm going to try and do video updates, maybe in front of a green screen. That's pretty much my goal. Don't believe it'll be a typhoon, just a tropical storm or low in Cat 1. Yeah, that's most likely with it. Luis is strong and Dolphin is only a Cat 2 by day 5. Then is that when this will be very critical to Dolphin's track? Yeah. If Dolphin's a tropical storm at that point, and Dolphin's down to a Cat 2 or maybe even Cat 1 at that point, that is going to play a critical role in where their tracks ultimately end up going. Will you do a 10K special? Not sure. I haven't really thought about that. If you have any ideas, I'd like to hear them. Monsoon trough will spin up. Monsoon trough will spin up Typhoon. Yeah, this monsoon trough is going to be pretty active across the Western Pacific. We can see that on here, especially the 850 millibar winds. Over here, basically an extension of the Habagat right over here, which is going to try and help spin up some storms. What has been the most impacted place so far in the Western Pacific? If you're talking about this year, let me look at the broad view of tracks. I'd believe it'd be the Mariana Islands, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, the Mariana Islands have been pretty much impacted 3 times so far. Japan's been impacted three times so far. I think Japan has probably been the most impacted. Maybe the Philippines at 3 or 4. I'd like to say the severely impacted would have to be the Mariana Islands, getting hit by 2 Cat 4 or 5s within just 3 months of each other. The channel is growing quite quickly nowadays. Yeah, I appreciate you all so much for the support throughout the live streams. That's why it's growing, because of you guys and supporting what I do. So whenever you subscribe to the channel, not only does it keep you updated, it also helps me keep you updated. Getting 25 subscribers in 24 hours, and that's nice. Thank you all so much. I'm glad I can help keep you all updated. When or what date or time will Luis be hitting the Philippines? Good question. Pull that up on here. The Euro AI, generally the time of landfall. Okay, it seems to be on Monday night. Is it Monday for you all? No, that would be Right now it's Sunday morning for you. So as we get into Monday nights, that seems to be the time that it makes its landfall. The Philippines, sometime within the next 36 hours, I'd say. Yes, Johannes. Yeah, the live streams is what's helped me gain some subscribers. I think also the animations, though. I need to look back at what's helped me gain more. Totally normal ask, how much fatalities in the future with Dolphin? I hope it's very low. I hope there's none with it, really, because these areas are built to withstand these kind of systems, so I hope ultimately people are taking this seriously. All right, Andrew says Pegasus still has Luis at 55 kilometers an hour and 70 kilometers an hour. Oh, yeah, the stream's been going on for nearly 2 hours now. Thank you all so much for the support. Tornadoes could form because of Luis. It's possible, thanks to getting some of that shear. Okay, we do have a half model run on Luis now. Let's see what it has it doing. I think this is its first model run. It struggles. It really doesn't show it doing much. Eventually gets sucked up into the circulation of Dolphin. Is it never really able to escape? And I'm not sure if it shows it making a landfall or not, which is interesting. It does have a well-defined center of circulation, at least that's what the model is initializing it as. But yeah, it never really crosses the Philippines, looks like, at least on this model run. When will you make a hypothetical animation again? I'm hoping by mid-September I will be doing... I will be releasing the Western Pacific hypothetical animation. What is Patreon member request? You'd have to like message me on Discord for that. Can we see the humidity? I mean, sure. I don't know which system you're talking about. We can take a look at the relative humidity of the system here. This also shows just how sheared it is. Well, its center circulation is located right over here. This is its like closer to surface circulation. Actually, we can pull up all of them, I think. Oh, dang. Well, that didn't work. That didn't work as I was expecting it to. See where it has the center. Okay, they're pretty much stacked. Get this center right over here. And our... Okay, well that didn't really work either. I'll try and pull them up like this, I guess. And there we go. So we have our closer to surface circulation being located right around here, and our mid-level circulation being located right around. So this just shows you the shear, how the shear is tilting it. So as you get higher up, that center circulation's further off to the west. Okay, let's look at that humidity since someone asked about that. Right over here. Here's a better look at that mid-level center, located all the way down here, where our other center is located right around here, so getting heavily sheared to the northwest of it. That center is roughly around 200, let me just double check. Yeah, it's around 250 kilometers to the southwest of the system's center. Overall, a sounding of its environment. We are seeing some dry mid-level air, especially to the east of the system. And yeah, we can definitely see that on here. Look at all this dry air off to the east that's trying to punch into the system. Kind of curious what it has it doing in the longer range. Overall, it just really moistens out. And then, yeah, you can see all that moisture getting funneled off to the east of Typhoon Dolphin there, which is why we may see something else try and develop beyond the 5-day range. Chase, do you think the next Pegasi update is more wind signals? Maybe. I'm not sure. What are the wind signals in the Philippines right now? Grab these up. Well, as of 5 a.m., Quezon, mainly Polio Islands, and Camarines Norte, northeastern Camarines Sur, and the Catanawanas are all under Signal 1 warnings right now. What do you have Dolphin and Luis by day 5, and is your intensity for both systems enough to make Dolphin's track impact Luis critical? Well, in the forecast range here, by 5 days out, I have Luis as a remnant low. So it's not even a tropical cyclone, it's just the remnants of the system. And a Typhoon at Dolphin is a Cat 2. Let me try and see where I have their positionings at. 130 north and around, or sorry, 130 east and around 17 or 19, sorry, like 19 or 18 north there. 19 or 18 north with 135. I think it was 135 or was it 130? Sorry about that, 130, okay. So at this point, Luis is likely right over here when Dolphin is up over here. So overall, their center of their circulations is probably going to be way up here. So it's not going to be really making too much of an impact for Dolphin. So I don't think so this far out. This is why Dolphin just keeps going west, doesn't go completely to the north just yet, and doesn't drag it to the south just yet either. Is it more possible to have strong tornadoes here in the Philippines this year? I'm not quite sure how the El Nino works for like tornadic activity in the Philippines. What's the upcoming low pressure area? Well, there's kind of two. One's going to be headed out to sea mostly, may impact Japan. That has a 50% chance of developing. This other disturbance in the Gulf of Tonkin only has a 10% chance of developing within the next 7 days. I'll talk more of them over the coming days, so if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I will help keep you updated on all the systems in the Western Pacific that may approach the Philippines. Chase, have you experienced a tornado before? Yes, that was the Rolling Fork tornado in the United States. That was nearly an EF5 strength tornado. Nearly got caught by it, unfortunately. Nearly got hit by it, but I was able to luckily survive. Luckily, it didn't drop over me, but that system did destroy the town of Rolling Fork, and I went to help out the next day, looking at all the damage. But yeah, I have seen a tornado before, or at least been near one. Haven't really seen one, as it was completely dark. Is Dolphin smaller than Bavi? I believe so. Is it possible that Dolphin rapidly weakens? I don't think so. The waters are just too warm for it. Actually, geez. Look at how much it's using up those waters. Man, once it stalls, there, I think it might be a little bit of an issue for the system. Just briefly check out this. Okay. I don't know why the waters look like that up there, but anyways, it could rapidly weaken actually if it stalls over the East China Sea. I don't think the oceanic heat content is that high. That far north. I'm going to take a look though. Briefly taking a look at scatterometer data. Don't have anything new for Luis. Alright, sea surface temperature analysis. The Northwest Pacific. I mean, there is a pocket of higher oceanic heat content. So maybe it's able to sustain it for long enough. I'm not entirely sure though. Look at the track of where it goes between 20 and 30 degrees north. It's around 25 degrees north latitude. I mean, so it's already in an area of high ocean or moderate oceanic heat content, so I think if it stalls for long enough, then it could rapidly weaken due to upwelling. Almost 7.25 thousand subscribers. Yeah, thank you all so much for the support. We're 3 subscribers away from 7.25K. And thank you all so much for all the support. Did you get my Patreon member request? Haven't looked at it yet. I'll try and pull up Patreon later after this. Message me on Discord if you haven't already. I'm at Hurricane Chaser Chase, and I'll try and get back to you on that request. Yeah, if you guys want to see or you want to have your own hypothetical typhoon animation, you can check out my Patreon. It should be under the links of my other animations. Is expected to have more strong typhoons in the month of August. Yeah, August is expected to be more active than we're at, or that we were at for July. Um, Maybe seeing more slopical systems, like slops, just tropical storms, severe tropical storms, maybe less major typhoons, but we'll see. Yeah, ace got completely missed. Okay. What's the most ace in a typhoon in the 2026 season? Let me check that again. I think it's Bavi. Yeah, Bavi did 53 ace. Sinlaku did 40. Mikala did 16. Dolphin's done 33. So yeah, right now it's Bavi, but Dolphin will soon generate likely more ace than Bavi did. Kind of Dolphin stalled because of Luis. Yeah, that's probably why it's going to be stalling. And then eventually weakening quickly. I mean, Dolphin then could move southwest if it weakens some. I'm not entirely sure about what the setup's going to be looking like at a point, but it is possible. Is the MJO present? I have not really looked at that at all, so I'm not sure. I don't forecast that kind of stuff. 10 minutes away from the Pagasa update. Yep. How much ace is Bavi? I think I briefly went over that. It was around 40 ace. Or sorry, no, 53.3 ace, excuse me. Why will Luis make its first and second landfall in Luzon? Well, it's mainly because it's continuing to follow the normal flow in the Western Pacific Basin, but if it becomes a little bit better consolidated out over here, then it's going to start feeling the influence of Typhoon Dolphin and start getting tugged off to the east. But gas update coming soon. Yep. So apparently Dolphin's really difficult to predict because of Luis. Yes. Well, you know Dolphin be a potential rain threat for Hong Kong by 1 or 2 days from now? I think so. Within the next 3 days, we should have a much better idea as to where Dolphin's going to be headed. Can Luis stall and weaken after hitting the Philippines? Yes. If the system never makes it into the South China Sea, then it's very likely the system could just die out as a low pressure area out over the Philippine or out over New Luzon. It could then get dragged out to the northeast and then just eventually die out here. I think the remnant moisture will eventually start getting funneled out further to the east and then may try and reform beyond that. But I'm not entirely sure. September, the most active tornado season in the Philippines? I am not sure. All right. Can dolphin cause severe landfall and thunderstorms? Not in, not in like. Well, you know what? It could actually do that in the Philippines. Not really the landfall in the Philippines, but in terms of severe thunderstorms, that's possible thanks to the habagat being increased or strengthening. Will Luis's moisture benefit dolphin if dolphin gets a lot of in its circulation? I don't think so. I think dolphin's going to be fine enough with its moisture. It's going to keep the dry air mostly at. I mean, you know what? It might. I think you're right on that. I think it might actually help it out. There's some dry air that's going to get pulled into its outer circulation, but some of that moisture from Luis could get sucked in on the eastern side, starting to mix out some of that dry air. Overall, though, the system is going to be quite moist. Yeah, not really seeing much in terms of dry air. Also, just look at the shear, very low for the system, just very healthy. Wow. Will Luis enhance the southwest monsoon? Of course. Okay, well, it will enhance the habitat? Yes. If we look at it on here, we go to, let's say, yeah, we'll keep it on this. We'll see that southwesterly monsoon, the habitat, does get increased as Luis makes its landfall, then it moves off towards Dolphin here. That's when the habitat does increase, and then eventually Dolphin takes control over it. Right, once Dolphin starts nearing Taiwan or China, that's when you can see the habitat really increasing. Will there be a Fujiwara effect? Yes. Between Dolphin and Luis, yes. So is the extreme impacts in the track from the habitat? Yes. The rainfall threats is mainly going to be from the habitat and the storm itself, and we'll start seeing rain. We'll start seeing impacts from dolphins forecast maybe by tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Is the air unstable? Not entirely sure. There's a lot of cape or whatnot. I could briefly take a look at that. Does this even do it? No, it doesn't. The GFS here. This is always kind of cool seeing how the Typhoon uses up all that energy, then starts running out as it gets into the East China Sea. For the Philippines, though, overall the energy there does increase thanks to that habagat. Curious what I can see with this here. Okay. Do you think Ragasa was stronger than Sinlaku? You'd have to check my animations for it. Can Luis stall at the South China Sea for 3 days before making its second landfall in Luzon? Don't think so. I don't think it's going to last that long. I think it's going to be around 36 to 48 hours. I think 3 days is too much for it. 36 hours is already a lot for it. How many eyewall replacement cycles has Dolphin undergone since it's formed? I think around 3, maybe 4. Right, we're now one subscriber away from 7.25K. Chase, who is in the top with the EXP? Richie is, then we have Johannes and Celestial. But then also Misfortune is pretty high up there. Same with Zafar and Pyro. Did you experience hurricane so strong that nearly destroyed your house? I mean, I've gone hurricane chasing before, not my own house, but other places. I've seen very strong winds from a Cat 4. Is Luis more stronger than Sinlaku? Nope, not even close. May peak out as a tropical storm. Sinlaku, on the other hand, was a Cat 5. All right, we've now hit 7.25 thousand subscribers. Thank you all so much for all the support throughout the stream. Glad I can help keep you all updated. Yes, thank you all so much for the support. I'm glad I can help keep you all updated on this storm and other storms that are out. In the Western Pacific. Yeah, I'll continue to do likely daily updates probably at least throughout the next 3 days or so. We're probably going to see even more updates daily as dolphins start threatening the Philippines. What will happen if Luis intensifies into a typhoon after landfall, but Dolphin is a tropical storm? What will happen? I don't think that's going to happen at all. I wouldn't even look at that hypothetical. Chase Bagassa website. Okay, let me take a look at that. Looks like we have rainfall totals now. Nope, not here. There we go. We now have our third forecast for the system. Does have it becoming a tropical storm within the next, I believe, at 12 hours or so, yeah. And then eventually it still has it curving out to sea, interestingly enough. Tropical cyclone warnings. There are still Signal 1 warnings for Quezon, Camarines Norte, Northern Camarines Sur, and the Catanduanes. Is Dolphin? No. No, it's not a Super Saiyan typhoon. It's just a major typhoon at this point. I see the questions, Johannes and Misfortune. I did want to briefly take a look at the overall model trends that these systems have gone through. Oh, well, that's cool. Grand Ensemble. Please show trends. Well, that's pretty cool. This thing. Hmm. I don't know how. Whoops, let me do models view by cycle. Yeah, so we can see how things have trended over the past few model runs, moving more to the west and what they had it were than where they had it going originally. Hmm. I kind of wanted to see the. Let me go back to their normal website. Light viewer. Hopefully this works. Yep, there we go. Hmm. Nope, wrong thing. I mean, this does show where the Grand Ensemble has trended. It's moved much more to the west now over the Ryukyu Islands. I'm not sure if I can pull up all the other models. That's unfortunate. That's a website that I'd use a lot. Chase, where will Luis make its landfall? Either going to be in Aurora or Isabella. It's possible that Dolphin will slow down near the Ryukyu Islands and weakening due to upwelling. Yeah, that's possible. I think that's going to happen. Right now, I am curious what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is saying in their prognostic reasoning, so I'm going to go over that for Typhoon Dolphin. That was 25. This is going to be for advisory 25. Nice. So I'll read it for you all. I know you can't see the entire thing, but I'll do my best to read it. There we go. So, satellite analysis, initial position, and intensity discussion. Animated multispectral satellite imagery (MSI) depicts a mature donut-shaped typhoon featuring a large 30 nautical mile wide eye embedded within a central dense overcast that exhibits a smooth canopy, indicative of expanded and robust radial outflow aloft. On infrared imagery enhanced by the Better-Dvorak curve, the CDO is defined by a solid ring of cold cloud tops indicated by black and white shades attempting to fully encircle the eye, with a persistent convective band along the western periphery. System appears to be preparing for a fourth eyewall replacement cycle. Oh my god. Another one? In the past, reps was wrapped nearly 70% around the primary eyewall. Further insights was provided by another ASCAT pass, which revealed an asymmetric wind field with larger wind radii in the northern semicircle. So let me look at this pass because that's not. Huh. So going through all the eyewall replacement cycles, we of course have this one right here. Then we have its second one right there, which then completes. Then we get to its third one. Man, that was a really nice microwave imagery of an eyewall replacement cycle. It tried it, then it failed, so it does it again. I'm not seeing another eyewall replacement cycle. but this asymmetry is likely the result of moderate but persistently southerly mid-level vertical wind shear. The surrounding environment is generally favorable, characterized by very warm sea surface temperatures, moderate oceanic heat content, and good divergence aloft, offset by the aforementioned low to moderate shear. The initial position is assessed with high confidence based on the circular cloud-free eye. As the convective structure has not changed significantly in the past 6 hours, the initial intensity has been held at 125 knots with medium confidence, which is supported by the T6.5 by PGTW and RCTP, and the higher end of the objective estimates from CIMSS, ranging from 160 knots to 126 knots. So the current steering mechanisms is the southwestern extension of a deep layer subtropical ridge, STR, centered to the northeast. Assessment of current environment: favorable, vertical wind shear of 10 to 20 knots, sea surface temperatures of 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, outflow moderate radial. Now let's go over the forecast discussion. So, Typhoon Dolphin will maintain its west-northwestward trajectory at 13 to 14 knots, steered along the southwestern periphery of a subtropical ridge centered near 43 north, 177 west. The western extension of this ridge will continue to build, driving the system in the same general direction. By hour 48, a separate ridge over the Korean Peninsula will become the dominant steering mechanism, maintaining the west-northwestward motion and guiding the system toward a very close passage to IO2. In the extended forecast, the storm's forward motion will decrease to 10 knots by hour 96. The deceleration will be caused by a large cyclone over eastern Siberia, which will erode the ridge and lead to weaker steering gradient. Typhoon Dolphin will imminently embark on a gradual, prolonged period of weakening. Although it briefly intensified after its last IOL replacement cycle, the system will traverse over lower oceanic heat content, which will be incapable of supporting a storm of its current high intensity. While other environmental factors such as low vertical wind shear and high sea surface temperatures will be favorable, the diminishing oceanic heat content will be the primary driver of this slow decay. Consequently, the forecast levels off the weakening trend at hour 96. The system will likely undergo at least one additional IOL replacement cycle before reaching the Ryukyu Islands. This will result in an even larger wind field by hour 96 and 120, causing significant impacts to extend far from the storm's center. Now, the model discussion. The cross-track spread among the model guidance is tight and better than the climatological average. However, the long-track spread increases significantly in the extended period, from 95 nautical miles at day 3 to 290 nautical miles by day 5. This divergence is driven by differing forward speeds, with the more poleward track solutions trending to move the system faster. The GFS, NAVGEM, and GALWEM solutions are the south of guidance and thus slower, while the Euro, the ESENS, and GEFS ensemble means and the AI model consensus trackers are further north and faster. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast track is virtually unchanged from the last forecast, positioned with high confidence near the multi-model consensus through hour 60, then hedged poleward of the consensus through hour 120. The intensity aids depict gradual weakening through the forecast period, but with significant spread. COAMPS TC is the high-end outlier, depicting re-intensification to super typhoon intensity nearly Cat 5 at 135 knots. This scenario is discounted as it does not align with a predicted upstream environment. HAFSE is the most aggressive in weakening the system, down to 75 knots by hour 120. The HWRF and experimental Google DeepMind models depict gradual weakening through hour 72, with little change in intensity thereafter. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center intensity forecast is set with high confidence for the first 72 hours and medium confidence for the later period. It depicts gradual weakening in close alignment with the HWRF and DeepMind solutions. So the track forecast is high confidence throughout the 5-day forecast. Intensity forecast is medium, though, throughout the 3-day range. 3 to 5-day range is low. Yeah, Knoll, you can watch my animation on Typhoon at Knoll to know its intensity. Most chase high view stream was Hurricane Melissa. Yes, I believe that's right. Yeah, donuts-shaped typhoon. We'll lose strength in to a typhoon. I'd say no. I think it's just going to be a low-end tropical storm. What is the worst forecast bust in the Western Pacific this year? Oh man, I'm not sure. I'd have to look back at that. Yeah, for the Central Pacific Hurricane Center to not consider 92W, or sorry, 92C a tropical depression. That is true, and we can actually look back at that. The track of 92C here, or of Dolphin, does have it as a tropical. Never mind. At least on this one, it doesn't have it. But at least looking at the earlier track of it, it does have it as a tropical depression out in the Central Pacific. But I think they just did it so that they can let the Joint Typhoon Warning Center have full control over it, so they didn't need to do really much of a transition. Well, the stream end. It's been over 2 hours. You know what? I'll probably end it right now-ish. So again, I'm going to be doing another stream tomorrow. We are Code Purple. Hope to see you all in the chat. We'll be discussing more about Luis, which will likely be making landfall in the Philippines. And then talking about Typhoon Dolphin, which will still likely be a Cat 3 or so. Maybe start highlighting some areas in the Philippines. We'll see. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next update. Stay safe.